So 10 years ago, there was a rally in Harrisburg. 10 years ago, the American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network joined forces with Colleges Against Cancer, and they attempted to change the law. And they succeeded. I remember going to the rally. I was one of the attendees. I was very involved in the Cancer Society, in the Cancer Action Network, in Colleges Against Cancer. Of course, Brian Crawford on the Hall of Fame for Washington County with the American Cancer Society for starting the CalU Relay for Life. And 10 years ago, we went to Harrisburg, and I, Brian Crawford, early on, before I became a radio star, before I got all of you fine people to tune in twice a week, I was on TV, the local news in Harrisburg, standing in the rotunda, reading a message that was pre-prepared for me, even though I did agree with it, but I was on TV fighting for a new smoking law, the Clean Indoor Air Act, and it passed. It was a really, really interesting time. We took a bus down to Harrisburg, a bunch of us from California University of Pennsylvania, which my guest this evening, I believe, is an alumni of, so it's something we shared in common, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we drove down there, and the idea is that you would meet with different legislators and try to convince them to pass and to support the Clean Indoor Air Act. And we went to these legislators with some information and holding a gas mask to give to the legislators to tell them about the effects that secondhand smoke can have on your body. And we wore a shirt that said, "I'm dying to be smoke-free," literally. And the law that was passed was a compromise, and the American Cancer Society and many of the advocates for the Clean Indoor Air Act were not satisfied with the result. And 10 years later, they're back at it, trying to change the law and make it more restrictive. And you would think that Brian Crawford, who went down and campaigned for the Clean Indoor Air Act, would be in favor of the new push in Harrisburg to add more restrictions to smoking indoors. And you would be partially right, but not completely right. I actually liked most of the bill. I thought it was a fair compromise. There are some changes that are being proposed that I like. There are some that I'm actually very much against in the way of private clubs. I made a post. You responded. We're going to address some of your questions and some of your comments on the smoking issue. But the whole thing stirred up some weird and interesting emotions and feelings for myself that are completely not smoking related at all. But it came about due to this clean indoor air bill or law being brought back up in Harrisburg. It was 10 years ago. And this time of year is always a weird time for me. My birthday is at the end of September, actually on International Podcast Day. Don't forget to come to the PodCon, September 30th at Spirit Hall, 5 to 10 p.m. We'll plug that a little bit more in depth as the show goes on. You can see the International Podcast logo behind me if you're watching on the screen. If not, just go to riversedgepgh.com/rivertalk and you can see the picture there. But it brings up some weird feelings. It's been 10 years since I went to Harrisburg and helped put the Clean Indoor Air Act into law. 10 years. And it's a weird time where you're in your 30s and you start rethinking what birthdays mean, and it was just a really, really weird feeling. And we're going to talk about that as well, and some of the comments that you have relayed to me on my birthday concerns. This is River Talk. I am Brian Crawford. This is the River's Edge Radio Network, proud presenter in cooperation with our friends at Sorgatron Media of the Pittsburgh PodCon. Again, that is September 30th, 5 to 10 p.m. at Spirit Hall upstairs. Really excited about this event. We are going to have over 30, that's right, 30 podcasters with tables set up for you to learn about their shows at the event. I didn't even know. I was kind of blown away by this. So I was the one who spearheaded the PodCon. I came up with the idea. So I was the main messenger, and I'm out there putting the word out, and then Sorgatron Media and our great sponsor, Sidekick Media Services, put the word out as well for the submission process. And over 30 responded, and most of the podcasts that responded I had never heard of. I was expecting the old guard, the podcasts from Sorgatron Media and the old podcasts from Pittsburgh Podcast Network and Epicast and Idiot Radio, and sure, we did get some respondees from all of those networks, but there were so many that I had never heard of. And it's given me an entire collection of podcasts to explore and listen to in the coming months. So that was really exciting for me, 30 different podcasts. And don't forget also, we're going to have 4 live podcasts on the big stage at Spirit and 1 discussion panel, which will be part of International Podcast Day, and a lineup of podcasts from 16 different countries from every corner of the world, everywhere from Australia to Asia to Europe, Africa, South America, all over, and of course, right here in Pittsburgh. This is the River's Edge, Pittsburgh's voice for local music at riversedgepgh.com. Don't forget you can tell your Echo device, just say, Alexa, play the River's Edge station on TuneIn, and you can listen to local music 24 hours there. You can also say, Alexa, listen to the Metal Edge station on TuneIn as well for all of your local Pittsburgh metal needs. But it is my birthday coming up. And it's weird because, like I said, I'm in my 30s. I'm now, the first year I turned 30, I remember everyone was so upset. I had turned off the ability to post on my Facebook wall. And you would have thought I went out and shot a bunny or something, or I don't know, did something terrible. Everyone is so in an outrage. They were messaging me. They were commenting on other post threads that I had made, wishing me happy birthday. It's like, damn it, you're going to get a birthday wish whether you want it or not. And it was weird, you hit 30 and you're like, and it's a weird time, especially now that I'm turning 32, because I'm getting closer to that mid-30 range. And somebody in the media once, a very successful person in the radio business, once told me, if you don't make it in radio by 30, you should start looking into other careers. Well, I'm not ready for that yet, and I'm going to keep plugging away until we get this thing, well, it's up and running, until we can get this thing to profitability to where I can turn it into my full-time job. But it's weird. You hit 30, and most people, I feel like at age 30, have something that they have going for them. And I do have this going for me, but I mean some sort of firm, some sort of substance, whether they have a family that they're raising or they've found their field and they're working in their field full time. And I'm still working towards that. And there's a lot of people in that position, but it makes you a little less enthusiastic for 30s whenever you see the calendar and you know that you got to get things going sooner rather than later. So we're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk about the smoking law. Don't forget you can comment. You can text us at 412-407-2PGH. That's 412-407-2744. You can message me on Twitter at RiverTalkPGH, or you can talk to us the most popular way, and that's through the Facebook Live feed at RiverTalkPGH on Facebook. I'm really excited because I got a press release the other day. And I'm signed up for different press releases from all over, and honestly, I just kind of skim the headlines, and if it's something that catches my eye, I'll read into it a little bit more, because, when you're really popular, everybody sends you press releases. So I got one press release, and this came from Shaler School District, and I thought, wow, how cool is this? And I feel like this entire week has just been a lot of love to the science community and the Carnegie Science Center. We welcomed their podcast, Snack, to the lineup, and that's going to be every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. at riversedgepgh.com. And then, of course, you can also subscribe to Snack on iTunes, on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or wherever. But they joined the network the same week that we release our Culture Cruise episode where we are going to the Carnegie Science Center. And it's the same day that we announced that they would be at the PodCon. And that was a coincidence. That wasn't planned. Basically, the way I've been doing those announcements is I'm just going down the list. So whoever signed up first, they get the first mention, and then it goes down the list from there. But I'm reading the press release from Shaler, and there's a teacher, Michael Penn. He's sitting next to me right now. He is he's going to be going to Antarctica coming up. This is crazy. Antarctica. Michael Penn, welcome to the studio. Welcome to the River's Edge. You're going to Antarctica?
I am. It's the coolest thing ever.
That's crazy. Now, you're only one of 11 teachers in the United States that is going on this trip.
Yeah, that's right. There's a program called Polar Trek. There are 11 teachers that were selected. 6 of them were going to the Arctic, and 5 of us are going to the Antarctic.
Oh, okay. And you're one of the ones that are going to the Antarctic.
That's correct, yeah.
So how do they decide who goes where?
It was a competitive process. And so researchers that had already been funded for their projects through the National Science Foundation also applied to Polar Trek. And once they were accepted, then they sort of mated the teachers who had the skills that they were looking for and maybe the personalities that they were looking for. And then those researchers got to interview several people, and then they picked the ones that they felt comfortable with.
What skills do you have that helped you in this process to get selected? I just feel like that's so crazy because I imagine there are a ton of people applying for this because it's such a unique opportunity, especially for someone who's as passionate about science as you would have to be.
Yeah, I keep waiting for somebody to realize they've made a terrible mistake because
Don't say that.
When we went to the orientation in Alaska, all these people were there. Most of them had PhDs. Most of them were teachers of the year of their states. So I'm not sure what they saw in me, but I'm happy to be along. That's great.
Well, you went to Harvard on the Mon. I mean, my goodness,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Actually,
Cal U. This is a very Cal U-based studio. My engineer here, Zach, is a graduate from Cal U. I'm a dropout from Cal U.
Yeah.
And
Actually, I was just talking to them because they got that same press release, and they want me to wear a scarf and get my picture taken down at the pole, with my Cal U blowing in the wind or something.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, actually, that was one of the only... That's one thing that has blown my mind about this story. To me, this is huge news, and nobody's talking about it. I mean, I don't understand that. At Cal U, they're one of the only ones that have an article out on the story, which I'm sure this has got to blow up, especially when you make your way down to Antarctica. I just think it's so crazy. One of only 5 to go down to Antarctica right here from the North Hills.
Yeah.
So what skills did you say that you...
I guess I'm kind of a weather geek.
Uh-huh.
I had been in the Army, so I have some outdoor skills, that sort of stuff. The interview was a lot of questions about whether I was comfortable in an airplane, how do I handle stress, what if things don't go the way that you kind of expected them to go because, it's such a harsh environment, things change pretty quickly, flights get canceled or you might get stuck somewhere for a little while. And I guess they're looking for somebody who's kind of calm. You were talking about being 32. I can even barely remember being 32.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been around a little bit, so I think that's a plus.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's definitely an advantage, and you have to love cold. Do you like cold weather?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this heat.
Yeah, see, I could never survive in Antarctica. I'm already whining and moaning like a baby about the 60 degrees outside. And that's one of the reasons why I hate this time of year. Like, it's literally the perfect storm of bad things for me. The cold weather, the birthday, all of that, all wrapped into one. I would love to visit Antarctica. I think it's such a cool opportunity. But I would like to visit it from, like, a Caribbean cruise or something. Just rolling by. I can look out the window from the warm cabin and see the beautiful sights. I couldn't imagine going down there, and how cold is it down there?
So I'm going into McMurdo Station. So we fly into Christchurch, New Zealand. We get issued all of our extreme cold weather gear because you can't be trusted to have the right stuff. So McMurdo Station will be pretty much like it is here in the winter. It's probably, 15, 20 degrees, something like that. I won't. That's where we're going to be based. Then we're going to fly out to remote locations, and we're servicing and installing automatic weather stations. So there's just little 12-foot towers with a bunch of, meteorological equipment hanging off of them. Then we're going to go to the South Pole. Temperature should be 20 below, maybe 30 below, in that range without wind chill. With wind chill, it'll be a little more challenging than that.
Oh, yeah. Wind chill, that's like almost the worst. I almost feel like the wind is worse than the cold.
Yeah, and I've learned so much really cool stuff. There's something called a katabatic wind, right? So up here, wind is produced pretty much by heat. There, the air is so heavy and cold that it rolls downhill.
Okay.
So at South Pole, you're at 9,300 feet of elevation. You're standing on 9,300 feet of ice. And so it's at altitude, so that air is just heavy and rolls downhill and can get pretty fast, like 200 miles an hour.
Wow, that's crazy. And from my understanding, and I actually learned this via Snack, the podcast, that Antarctica is actually a desert.
Yeah, it's the highest, driest, coldest, and windiest continent.
Yeah, that's
like
wild.
I've said that before in front of my classes.
Yeah. So you're going to be reporting based on what you have, what you're doing down there via a blog?
Yeah, so there's a Polar Trek webpage, and I'm writing journals for kids. We'll also do it's called a Polar Connect. So it's not Skype, but it's a similar platform.
Okay.
If the internet cooperates, which it doesn't always. It's amazing that you would think that a science mecca like South Pole Station, with the smartest people on the planet working, that you would have good internet access, and it's horrible, actually.
Well, it's probably almost like going to it's almost probably like going to the science, not the science center, the space station.
Yeah, right.
In outer space, going there, because it's so removed from civilization, human civilization, that it's almost like being on another planet.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
That's one of the cool things for my kids.
Yeah.
That I'm teaching, because this is as close to going to another planet as you can get and still be on Earth.
Yeah. It's so weird that kind of place still exists.
Yeah,
really.
So evidently, these we have an internet connection when the satellite's visible, and we have to get on as it traverses over the sky. So
basically, it's like living in Middle America.
Yeah, right, exactly. And no internet.
No internet. So. No, that's wild. So you said you've been to Alaska for the orientation and stuff like that. So is that the coldest place you've been so far? Is Antarctica colder than Alaska?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Alaska's cold. When we were there in March, it was 15 or 16 below, something like that. And that's about what it'll be, maybe a little colder at the pole. I had been there back when I was in the Army for the Arctic. There's an Arctic training center up there.
You were in Antarctica already?
No, I was in Alaska.
Okay.
Training. Yeah, not in Antarctica.
Wow, I was going to say, that's really wild.
Yeah.
So this, from what I understand, if I'm incorrect, please inform me. I understand that there is some sort of cooperation with the military with this trip as well?
So there was an Antarctic treaty signed in 1959 that said that nobody owns Antarctica and there can be no military activity there.
Oh, okay.
However, we do fly on American military aircraft. So we'll fly in a C-17 and a C-130 to get around. The C-130s have skis, so they can land. C-17, they need to move a lot of cargo in and out of there. So, that's the only military there'll be.
Okay, so with the research that you're doing, you said it's a lot of it's weather-based. Mm-hmm. Does it have to do with studying climate change? Is that part of the objective of Polar
So these
Trek?
are automatic weather stations, and they collect data, everything that you would expect. That data is then sent up to satellites. That is then sent to the University of Wisconsin. And then it's available online for anybody. And so I went to a workshop on Antarctic meteorology, and there were people from all over the world that use that data. So it's useful right now to know what the weather is for when you fly your airplane through it, but it's also good because over long periods of time. And some of these automatic weather stations have been up since 1986.
Oh, wow.
The PI that I'm working with, the principal investigator on the project, is Matthew Lazara, and it's called the Automatic Weather Stations Project.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Polar Trek. Mm-hmm. Is it run through the government? Is it as a private company?
It's a National Science Foundation funded program, and it's this. It's to get teachers to get connected, have relationships with researchers, long-term relationships with researchers, and to inspire kids, make them knowledgeable about science, make them think of themselves as maybe future scientists, that this is approachable to them, and that science isn't boring. It's not just a textbook and open to page 87.
I would love to have a teacher like you. When I was in high school, we had a chemistry teacher, and her name was Wheezy. And she had these really cool...
Her name was...
Well, that's what she went by. That was her nickname. But she had this husband who was a former secret agent or something, and she would tell these crazy stories about driving over minefields and things like that in the Middle East, and it was they were the most interesting stories you could possibly think of. But when it came to chemistry, she sat there and read from a piece of paper in a monotone voice, just like this. Never looked up. And every day I would fall asleep. I could not stay awake. But when she was talking about the minefields and the secret agent stuff, I was all tuned in. So to me, this would be something that would be really fantastic to have. First off, to have a teacher that's that engaged, but also to have that real world experience coming through the classroom. I feel like that's got to be invaluable for the education process.
That's the whole idea, right? And it was a 2-year process for me to apply. I applied the first time and didn't get in, and I shared that with my kids. Actually went through I gave my kids the application that I had sent in, and they looked through it, and they actually found where I misspelled the name Polar Trek. It ends with a C.
Oh, yeah.
And I misspelled it with a K one time. I spelled it right 13 times and spelled it wrong once. So
wow.
My kids were all about it. And then, we're all about keep trying. If you keep stick at it. If you don't get what you want the first time, keep trying. So they followed me through all of that, and here I am. It's great.
That's so cool. And it shows to me that there's such a... I don't know. To me, this shows a very special teacher in you. I had some teachers when I was in high school, a Japanese teacher, 2 of them actually, who had taken time out of their day to go to my scout meeting and teach people about Japanese language and culture. And I feel like every once in a while you find these teachers that are willing to go above and beyond. I don't know that any of my teachers have gone so far above and beyond that they've been willing to travel to a different hemisphere. But still, I mean, it just, I think that really...
Yeah, want to be a good role model.
Exactly.
And get some excitement going. You mentioned scouts. I was a former scoutmaster for my church. Both my sons are Eagles. And
I'm an Eagle as well.
Yeah, that's great. And my committee chairman gave me a stack of stickers that he wants me to slap on anything I can get onto in Antarctica.
Yeah, I don't blame him. That would be very cool.
Actually, I'd love to have your logo and type it out or print it out on a piece of paper so I could get my picture taken with it and
that would be amazing.
With that. Same thing
we could definitely cover that. Then we can give a little update. If we can even get one of your little video blogs, we can put that on the green screen or just post it on the River's Edge page, because I feel like this is something really cool, and I think it's something that our area should be proud of here in the North Hills and the greater Pittsburgh area as well. Yeah. Are you nervous about anything?
I'm really not. The thing I was most worried about was the people I'm going with. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about being cold. I'm not worried about it. Trust me, National Science Foundation is all about safety. They don't want anything bad to happen. So I'm not concerned about any of that. I'm comfortable in helicopters, comfortable outside. But I was concerned about the people I'm going to hang out with, right? I'm going to go, where no humans been before, when we're installing these things and in very tight quarters with some other people I don't really know. But I've gotten to go to Madison twice and spent quite a bit of time with these guys, and they're great guys and smart people. Really looking forward to it.
I would be more nervous about my life back here at home. I feel like traveling there, well, I couldn't deal with it because of the cold, but if I was stuck in, I don't know, some remote island in the tropics, I would be able to handle that, but I would be worried because I'm not connected. Like, for example, you mentioned the satellite internet. I couldn't reach back. Even when I was on a cruise once, I was able to sneak down in the middle of the night and log onto the internet to check on the station to make sure everything was going well. But you can't do that in Antarctica. You're cut off, and to me that would be really frustrating, and it would make me almost nervous about what's going on back home. That's
definitely something that I'm I live on my phone my whole life. Every bit of connection I have is through my phone.
It's wild. So when are you going on the trip?
So I'm leaving end of November. One thing I'm really looking forward to is going to be 24 hours of daylight. So
Oh,
the
wow.
sun doesn't go up over your head. It'll be at about 20 degrees above the horizon and just circle around.
Oh, that's cool.
360 degrees. That'll be really cool.
As somebody who works overnight, I would really appreciate that because I often have to sleep when the sun is up and then I'm awake when the sun's down. And that's always something I am not really a big fan of. I'm a big fan of the sun. That's another reason why I hate the coming fall and winter is because it becomes so much darker up here.
Yeah, right.
So that would be really, really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So
I'm also looking forward to, well, not looking forward to, I think it's weird. My whole life is about kids now, right? I'm a school teacher and there are no children on the continent, on the entire continent.
Wow.
So that's
None.
interesting. Yeah. Well,
except for the baby penguins.
Apparently Argentina,
Okay.
in an effort to, if they ever needed to be able to claim Antarctica as their own, they brought some pregnant women down.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and the women gave birth, and then so that they can claim, that they have some Antarcticans, they have some citizens of Antarctica. If they ever had to argue that they should own the place.
Wow, that's crazy. That place is interesting. Argentina. That's interesting. So the treaty that you mentioned that nobody owns it, is that like every nation in the world is signed
There
up to that?
There were 53 signatories at the time. I'm not sure if any more have, but it's all the countries you would expect.
Yeah. That's interesting. And so I imagine, what kind of wildlife exists in Antarctica? I know there's
not a whole
penguins.
lot, right?
Yeah.
There are penguins, several different types of penguins. There are several types of birds. There are no trees, no grasses. There are some lichen, that kind of stuff. And most of that is more on some of the islands on the peninsula that goes up toward the bottom of South America. There are seals, right? And then there are like killer whales, narwhals, and beluga whales, that kind of thing. I probably won't see many of those. I might get to see some penguins, maybe at a distance. You need open water for the seals, so I'm not sure I'll be that close to them. Yeah, I'll be well into the continent.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's got to be almost weird because even in the city you see so many creatures, whether it be pigeons or geese or
no
something.
Insects, nothing. Yeah. And then another thing that I'm looking forward to is when we get way out there are no smells, right? Because
I would love that.
Everything that generates smell here is living things and exhaust and all that kind of stuff, and out there it's just nothing but ice.
So I would love that. As somebody, I'm allergic to everything as far as smells. Right? Yeah. This time, another reason why I hate this time of year. But I would love to be able to escape the smells because even when it's summertime, you've got like bathroom smells and things like that. It would be wonderful to not have to experience any of that. God, try walking down Fort Duquesne Boulevard. Have you ever tried to do that? Oh my goodness, it smells like a sewer when you're walking by. So
speaking of sewer and things, they're so serious about not contaminating the environment that when we're out, we have to bring everything back. All of our any kind of waste. I mean, if we drop a screw or something in the snow and we can't find it, we're supposed to file an environmental impact report.
Oh, wow.
But we also have to bring back all of our personal wastes.
Yeah, that makes sense because you're right. You don't want to contaminate, and that's kind of great to hear because. And I'm not one of those people that love to just rail against the human species because that's easy to do. You can turn on any movie and hear that. But we are really one of the only creatures to have really impacted the world the way we have. The only other creature I can think of, I think there's a species of ant that has moved across the United States that has really created a lot of havoc. But other than that, all of the creatures that have done that are all creatures that we've moved around.
So like I know at McMurdo Station, when the icebreakers come in and they bring in these big ships with all the supplies, they refill it with every bit of waste, human waste and reused, anything, all the packaging, everything gets shipped back to.
So it really is like being on another world because I know in the space station they have to do all sorts of weird things to, because obviously you're floating around, so it's like a whole different experience. Are you able to shower there?
Yeah, so at South Pole, you get 1 2-minute shower a week.
Ooh.
And it makes sense, right? I mean, we're surrounded we're on 2 miles of ice, but that same ice has to be dug up, dumped into a hopper, and then melted. And the fuel they use is jet fuel. I know it's weird, right? That jet fuel, but apparently it doesn't gel at temperatures that are in that range. Yeah. So like diesel turns to jello at like 40 degrees, 40 below zero.
Wow.
So, so it makes sense why you can't just use tons of water.
Wow, very cool. It's Michael Penn, teacher at Shaler School District. He is going to Antarctica with Polar Trek, and that's Trek with a C. And I almost made the same mistake and almost spelled it incorrectly before today's show. I triple-checked to make sure I got it right. But really, really fascinating stuff. We're hoping to hear a lot about his experiences. I'll be looking at the blog myself. Really, really excited about it. I think it's really, really cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. This has been great.
Yeah, it's Michael Penn. We're going to take a short break. If we can play a small song before we get into the weird news, then we'll have the weird news. And then after that, we're going to jump into the smoking discussion. Should the rules change? Are you a non-smoker or a smoker? We want to hear your thoughts. Or are you a former smoker? We want all of your perspective there on the subject. More on that. Don't forget, International Podcast Day. Oh, what? I just thought of something really, really messed up. If you were, like, if I were down there in Antarctica and I was attacked by a swarm of penguins, I don't know what they would do with me. There's no way that they're going to send my body to Hahn Funeral Home, the only family-owned funeral home in Millville. I guess I could count on a green burial, but I would not be able to count on the great service of Hahn Funeral Home. Don't forget, right here in Millville, Hahn Funeral Home. We've got weird news up next, if that promo wasn't weird enough for you. And then we've got the smoking conversation a little bit later. Here, this is River Talk. I'm Brian Crawford. This is the River's Edge Radio Network. Dawn Strange leading us into the Weird News segment with Number One Weapon. I am Pittsburgh's moral compass, Brian Crawford, your number one weapon against the Mon Monster, raging war on the city every week with floods and rain and cold weather. And everyone thinks it's the hurricane, but no, it's the Mon Monster. That's one thing in Antarctica. You don't have to worry about that. Too cold for that. That's one thing the Mon Monster and I have in common.
There'll be another kind of monster down there.
Yeah, different types of monsters, I'm sure. Alan messaged us in the Facebook Live feed before we get into the weird news, so we'll take care of a little bit of that business. He says that 24 hours of daylight can wreak havoc on you. I don't agree. I love the idea of 24 hours of daylight. Can you imagine how much more you could get done with 24 hours of daylight? Nathan says, awesome interview. Congrats to Michael. Yeah, really great conversation. And apparently it's Nathan's alma mater at Shaler. He says, go Titans. Amanda's joining the chat room. Thank you so much to Amanda as well. And Alan made some sort of reference to my career. Alan, you can go fuck yourself. This is River Talk. This is the River's Edge Radio Network. I'm Brian Crawford with your weird news. And the first story has to deal with a severed limb. In India, a man gets caught for killing his wife because he walks into a police station. Get this. Comes into the police station bearing the evidence. Beheaded his wife, dragged the head in, and he got caught. Footage was taken at a police station. The guy's 35 years old. He told the officer, according to Sky News, he told the officer that, "This is my wife, sir. I gave her all the love I could." All the love he could by cutting off her head. The second story is interesting. The second story comes from a church sign. You know, the churches, they always have those messages where they're trying to bring you closer to Jesus, right? Well, one church apparently has a really interesting view of what that means. The church service, 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Sundays, has a sign message, and the church is called West Side Christian Church. The sign says, "Forgiveness is to swallow when you want to spit." Forgiveness is to swallow when you want to spit. Obviously, they're talking about bad iced coffee, right?
Clearly.
However, this iced coffee is fantastic. This iced coffee cannot be beat. It's from the cafe downstairs, the Mr. Small's Cafe. But if I were to get it from a convenience store, for example, that's one thing. Like they sell these iced coffees at convenience stores, and they always say that they're just regular iced coffee, and then it's always nasty or it has mocha in it or some sort of crazy shit. But yeah, you know what? I wonder. I don't know if I should say that. I wonder if it's a Catholic church. I'm just saying. Forgiveness is to swallow when you want to spit. Our third story comes from the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police with a warning about drunk driving. They say, folks, a friendly reminder to never drink and drive. This is on their Facebook page. We'll find you if you do. And they post a picture of a car, and you can't really tell where the car is until you read further down in the post. It was a drunk driving incident where a car found itself on the roof of a giant eagle. It says here, police responded to a call for a vehicle on the roof of the Greenfield Giant Eagle around 4 a.m. Officers did indeed find a car on the roof of the Giant Eagle. The uninjured driver was standing next to the car. Pittsburgh Fire, EMS, and Zone 4 officers got the male operator off the roof, and he was charged with driving while intoxicated. Giant Eagle employees had to be evacuated from the store, but nobody was injured, luckily. I think this guy's a hero, man. If you're going to go and get caught drunk driving, landing on a Giant Eagle, uninjured, and that's the thing, when you're drunk, you can do anything. Anything. Are you familiar with the story about the Bridge to Nowhere in Pittsburgh? The Bridge to Nowhere was actually, I believe the Bridge to Nowhere is the Fort Duquesne Bridge. I could be wrong. It's one of the bridges along the Allegheny River. And it was a bridge where they started building it and they ran out of money. So they didn't finish it. They barricaded the side of the bridge, and it was mocked in talk radio throughout Pittsburgh for years, and they called it the Bridge to Nowhere. They always would talk about the Bridge to Nowhere. Well, one student from CMU decided that he was going to cross the Bridge to Nowhere. And I'm assuming he was intoxicated, but the guy drove through the barricades and drove at such speed that he went across the bridge in mid-flight and landed on the other side of the river, unscathed. And then they suddenly found the money to complete the Bridge to Nowhere. But that happens all the time. Where I grew up in North Irwin, there was a train that ran under this old wooden bridge. And unfortunately, and this is why I have a problem with private companies being involved in infrastructure, the train company, the bridge right now is damaged, and the train company won't fork over the cash to pay their share to get the bridge fixed. But anyway, somebody fell off of that bridge. They drove off of that bridge, and it is a steep fall. And it happened multiple times while I had lived in North Irwin. And every time it happened, the guy would get up and walk away, unarmed, uninjured. Because when you're drunk, your body doesn't react, and it's weird. Your body will tense up in a situation like that. You're falling off of a bridge. You get nervous and you tense up, and that's when you break bones. When you're drunk, you're just kind of, ooh, you're falling off the bridge, and because you're not tensed up and you're loose, you don't get injured. It's weird. Your body almost, like when you're sober, your body almost doesn't work right or something. It doesn't protect you. It's weird. I don't know. Your body definitely doesn't protect you from secondhand smoke, or at least it tries to, but secondhand smoke is a serious health concern, and the state legislature is trying to fix the issue. They're trying to expand the smoke-free indoor policy, the law, the Clean Indoor Air Act. And I have mixed feelings on it. I want to hear your thoughts, 412-407-2PGH. You can text us, or you can hit me up again in the Facebook live chat or on Twitter at RiverTalkPGH. But I asked the question on Facebook, and I got some good responses. What they're trying to do is, it's Democrats in the Pennsylvania House And they're trying to expand. It's the 10-year anniversary, as I said, of the Clean Indoor Air Act, and they're trying to expand the territory of it. And they're trying to expand the Clean Indoor Air Act to cover casinos, private clubs, and currently smoking bars in Pennsylvania. When it comes to the casinos, I am all on board. I never understood why casinos get special privileges over other bars. And it's weird because you go to the rivers, and it's like going into an old restaurant. And I'm somebody, understand where I'm coming from. I'm against smoking, you as an individual smoking, but I'm in favor of your right to smoke in your own place. But I've always been friends with the smokers, so I'm not one of those people that treats smokers as if they're like the drudge of society. When I worked at Giant Eagle back in the day, I worked at a time before the Clean Indoor Air Act, and they actually had 2 break rooms that were right across the hallway from one another, a smoking break room and a non-smoking break room. And I always sat in the smoking break room, even though I've never smoked a cigarette, because all of my friends are smokers. Today, in my current job, I sit outside with all of the smokers. When I come here to Mr. Small's, I go out to the courtyard with all the smokers. I'm always with the smokers. I don't know why. I get along with people who smoke, whatever they're smoking, all of them. So I'm sympathetic, but you got to look at the big picture. And you make a decision to smoke or not smoke, and it is an addiction, but it still is your decision. As a non-smoker, when you're inhaling secondhand smoke, that's not a choice that you're making. That's a choice that's being made for you. But it's weird when you go to the casino. If you remember the old days, like I said, there was the smoking and non-smoking break room, but you also had restaurants with smoking sections and non-smoking sections. And if you go to the casino, they have that. They have smoking sections and non-smoking sections. And what people don't understand, because they think by sitting in the non-smoking section that they're saving themselves, but they're not. And that's one of the things that I learned 10 years ago through the Cancer Society, is the health department in the United States. They came out with evidence 10 years ago that despite having filtration systems, even the most, and now that was 10 years ago, maybe things have changed, but at least 10 years ago, the most advanced air filtration systems did absolutely nothing. Had zero impact on the health side of secondhand smoke. They could get rid of the smell, but the toxins were still in the air. And having a filtration system, having a smoking, non-smoking section, did virtually nothing for public health. You need to eliminate smoking in a building in order to get rid of the negative health effects of smoking. And it's a really big deal. So I asked the question, where do people stand on this issue? We got so many responses. Paul says, yes, it is time to grow up as a city. We're one of the few major cities without a blanket smoking ban. And the ones that don't have one aren't ones that we want to be like. I don't necessarily agree. So we talked about the casinos. I'm in favor of making them smoke-free. I don't think that they should get special privileges, especially when they have restaurants in there and everything else, because the entire way that the Clean Indoor Air Act came down is it's based on a percentage of your food sales. So if you make so much money in food, you're not allowed to have smoking. There was a bar in Millville, actually, that just went from smoking to non-smoking, and I think that had something to do with it, the amount of food that they were selling. But I thought that was a good compromise. You still had bars for smokers to go to, but it was done in a way where you're almost foolish not to have food in certain certain establishments, certain bars. So you're naturally going to have a variety of smoking and non-smoking bars. So I'm okay with that. The casino thing, I think that they should be smoke-free. It doesn't make sense. But the one area, and on the bar issue, I'm kind of torn. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on whether the local dive bar should be smoke-free or not. I think eventually more bars are going to be smoke-free than smoking because the younger generation, they're not always wanting to smoke. Most of them, even the smokers that I know who are millennials, they still go outside. Even though they can smoke inside, a lot of them still choose to go outside. And I think it's just becoming a socially normal thing to do. It's kind of not normal to smoke inside in a lot of cases nowadays. But the one area where I am 100% against the Cancer Society and against the legislators trying to change the law is they are trying to make private clubs smoke-free. If I'm joining a club, I know what the rules are in that club. It's not open to the public. So I'm against that concept. And Sandy says, in her opinion, if it's a smoking private club and the person is a non-smoker or it bothers them, stay away! They are private clubs, and there are non-smoking private clubs that people can join. I agree. I don't think that's right. If it's a private club, you've decided to join that club, you know going in what that club has to offer. So we have here, we have Adam, who says that the only place right now allowed is VFW, and he tried to bring up the idea of weed. What happens when we legalize weed? Is that going to be allowed anywhere? I feel like if they legalize weed, it should be the same as smoking a cigarette. You have your smoking bars and non-smoking bars. I think if you're not allowed to smoke, you're not allowed to smoke. And honestly, and I know people aren't going to want to hear this either, but get rid of the vaping. If it's a non-smoking bar, you shouldn't be vaping in there either. It's non-smoking. Vape is smoke. And whatever you're breathing in, if it's something that's smoked, it can have negative effects secondhand, I believe. But even beyond that, I'll be honest, I don't enjoy the smell of weed. I've grown more used to it. But if I'm at a place that's non-smoking, I don't want any smoke there. So, let's see. We have a good comment here, and this comes from Jordan. Jordan says, and this is an issue that I really thought was interesting, a good point that he brought up. Jordan says that he's a non-smoker, but he thinks this is absurd. He says if a business owner owns the property and the building that the business is on, pays taxes on the property, pays taxes on the profits and income, and adds sales tax to goods sold, why would they not have the right to decide if smoking is allowed in their establishment? How much government do we want? Well, I think when it comes to discrimination, and I know that's a buzzword that people like to throw around, but in this case I do think it applies. And when it comes to public health in a public establishment, it may be privately owned, but it is open to the public. I think I absolutely want the government involved at some level. And I know you're saying, how is it discriminatory? And it is, and here's how. So 10 years ago when I went to Harrisburg, one of the people who joined us on the trip was my roommate at the time at school, and he had asthma. And the man could not enter a bowling alley in Pennsylvania, and certain levels of asthma are worse than others. And he couldn't go bowling because every single bowling alley in the region was a smoking bowling alley. You didn't have the option to go to a non-smoking bowling alley. And I thought, well, that seems kind of silly that a guy can't go bowling because of a medical condition. It would be like opening up a new building and not making it handicap accessible. And what Jordan went through on the thread and came to the conclusion, or his conclusion, is that the market will force people to accept these changes. Like the market itself will force businesses to make changes to their establishment. And that's just not the case. It took amendments to the Constitution to get places to accept people of different races into buildings. And that doesn't make any sense. You would think the markets would suggest that the more people coming through your doors with money to spend would be good for business. But people were more interested in perpetuating their racism than making money. You look at the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, it forces places to be accommodating to people who are handicapped. It forces businesses to allow people to bring service animals into restaurants and stores, and it forces stores to make their aisles wide enough for people with a wheelchair to get through. And he's saying that situations like that, a business would naturally make those accommodations happen because the market would demand it. But that's not true. It required a law. And what's my proof? Well, there was a lawsuit dealing with Kmart. This is before it was Sears Holdings, I believe. And anybody who still goes to a Kmart knows that Kmart will cram as much shit into their store as humanly possible. They kind of have the opposite approach of Target, where if you go to Target and they have these big, wide aisles that you can walk through, Kmart will shove racks in those aisles as much as they can to try to push as much product in front of your face as possible. Well, Kmart just wouldn't follow the ADA laws, even though it actually, in my opinion, makes it a more pleasurable experience for customers. And there was a lawsuit that came down. Kmart lost the lawsuit. And I know this because I worked there. The manager, because one of the ADA rules is that there has to be 3 feet between every structure. Well, because Kmart lost this lawsuit, a judge came down, and this, I don't know if this still happens. I don't know when the time expires, but at least when I had worked there, back when I was going to Cal U, a store manager or an assistant store manager would have to walk through the store with a 3-foot roller and literally zigzag and walk through every single rack in the entire store to make sure that the store was ADA compliant. Financially, it does not make sense to make your business ADA compliant. It doesn't make sense. The amount of money that it costs to put a ramp into an old building is really expensive. Ton Pottery opened up right here on North Avenue in Millville, and they put in that ramp. It's required, and it is the right thing to do. But how many people in wheelchairs do you think are going to come through Ton Pottery and take classes? Maybe a lot. Who knows? Maybe there's a wheelchair gang, and the entire gang's just going to come, the wheelchair club, and take pottery lessons at Ton Pottery. Well, they can because there's a ramp. But the likelihood of that just isn't that great. And if you only get 2 or 3 customers in the lifetime of your business, the money made off of those customers does not justify the cost to make that business handicap accessible. Not that it shouldn't be, but that's why you need laws to dictate that. Smoking nowadays in 2018 is not what smoking was 10 years ago. It's not the same. People's minds have changed. Education has changed things, but that education came through government intervention. People realize now that smoking is not safe. And it's funny because there's a comment here that came from, came from a gentleman. I can't find the name, but basically he referred to a thing that went on before where doctors were saying, they said 9 out of 10 doctors said that smoking is safe for you. And there were these studies that came out because at the time they said, oh, it relieves stress, it does this, it does that. It's kind of like when I talk about comfort food and I say, well, it is good for me. It's good for my mental health. It's the same type of deal. They would go through and say, and I remember there was a commercial, look it up, it's hilarious, that had a doctor endorsing cigarette smoking because the science wasn't there. And this is more than 10 years ago. But still, the science when smoking first came out, when smoking became really popular, the science wasn't there that's there now. And through government intervention and through education, people's minds have changed on smoking. But 10 years ago, there would not have been all of these non-smoking bars that the Clean Indoor Air Act created because it was not financially viable to do so in the eyes of the business owners. They didn't want to chase away their regulars. Now you're in a situation where people can't believe when there are smoking bars, and they're happy when non-smoking bars move in, but that just didn't exist 10 years ago. It didn't. And the market was not going to change that. It wasn't. It just wasn't. The law needed to be put in place to change people's minds. I'll continue the conversation after the show if anybody wants to chime in. Did we get any messages on smoking? Nothing on smoking. Okay. So, yes, the law is important. Again, I have mixed feelings on the new changes. Private clubs, no. I'm sorry. You're joining a private club. It's not open to the public. It's a different situation. It's apples to oranges. Again, at River Talk PGH, you can chime in. You can message me there. And I'll take your texts after the show, 412-407-2PGH, 412-407-2744. And let's continue the conversation offline. There's also the Facebook group we started. It is the River Talk Show Talk. Please chime in there. That's where you can send me story ideas, weird news, and all of the like. I want to end with this. Pittsburgh PodCon, I had a weird dream. And it happened right before today's show. I'm in bed. And I first off, this dream would never happen because it's Spirit. We're having the event at Spirit Hall upstairs, and that place is a class act. If you've never been to Spirit, here's your chance to go to Spirit for free, which doesn't often happen. Most of their events cost money because bands are trying to get paid. I'm not trying to get paid. I'm just trying to get people to listen to podcasting. So we're having the PodCon, over 30 podcasts. Well, I had this dream in my bed today. And I woke up in a panic. I'm there at Spirit, and I get upstairs, and for some reason it's like a mess, which again would never happen because they're top class at Spirit. So I go downstairs to talk to the people at Spirit in this stream. I'm frustrated. I go back upstairs, and everyone's gone. All of the podcasters are gone. They packed up and left. And this is before the event really got started. And I'm like, oh my God, where is everybody? It's a ghost town. I go outside, and Michael Sorg is there in his car, and I'm talking to Sorg. I said, what's going on? He goes, oh, well, no one's here. We all decided to leave. And I about had a heart attack. So what I'm saying is, please come to PodCon. Don't give Brian a heart attack on my birthday, September 30th. Again, it's going to be a great event. I'm really excited. So much great talent in this city. So many people doing it from home, too, which is kind of cool. It's a very do-it-yourself culture, the podcasting scene. So come on out. That's going to be at Spirit Hall, September 30th, 5 to 10 p.m. Please do not miss this event. It's 1 week away from today. There's going to be no River Talk that week. We're going to use the discussion panel in place of River Talk. So it's going to be an exciting day. Don't miss it. That's Spirit Hall, 5 p.m., September 30th. That's Zach Fell behind the board. Great job as always. Thank you so much to Michael Penn of Shaler School District for coming in. Don't forget to follow the River's Edge at River's Edge PGH and the River Talk Show at River Talk PGH for updates on what Mr. Penn is doing down in Antarctica. I think it's so cool. Definitely proud that he is from the North Hills right here in Pittsburgh. You should be proud too. That's Zach Fell. I'm Brian Crawford. This has been River Talk on the River's Edge Radio Network. Stay tuned because we have local music up next right here on the River's Edge.